Okay, so my plan for this video is to go over those two homework problems that you needed help with. And the first problem isn't too bad because it's a word problem and it gives you this quadratic function right here. And the question is asking what is the unit price that should be charged to maximize revenue, and then the question says what is the maximum revenue. Okay, so what I did was I just kind of rewrote the equation here on the side, and you need to recognize that this is a quadratic. And one more thing that you need to recognize is that the revenue is really the y variable and the p is really the x variable. Okay, so when you think about this graphically, this parabola is opening down because of this negative sign. And if you draw a graph opening down, and if you label your axes, this is revenue because revenue represents y, and the x-axis will be price because price represents x. Basically, the question is just asking you for the coordinates of the vertex. So what is the vertex right here? And the reason why we're looking for the vertex is because the question is asking for the price. So this x-coordinate is the price. That gives you the maximum revenue, right? So this is called the unit price. And if I go across on the vertex in red here, this is your maximum revenue, which is also what the question is asking for. So this question is basically asking you for the vertex, all right? Okay, so let's go ahead and find the vertex here. And obviously there's a few ways where you can find the vertex, but since this question gives you a fraction here, I'm going to solve this question by completing the square. Okay, so if I complete the square, I need to factor out this negative 1/2. So I'm pretty sure this will be, a skill that you need to know when you're completing the square. When you're completing the square here, so we factor out the negative 1/2, and I get p squared here. And now the trick is you take this 2 down here and you multiply it with the 2,000. So 2 times 2,000, that gives you 4,000. And because there's a negative sign here, you must have a negative sign to follow up. Okay, so I'm just erase that. And then when you're completing the square, the next sign is always a plus. All right, so after that, you want to take the middle guy, which is 4,000. And you want to divide that number by 2. And that gives you 2,000. And then you take your 2,000 and then you need to square it. 2,000 squared is a very big number. It's actually 4 million. So let me put the 4 million here. And then we close the bracket. And after that, what you need to recognize is that when you create this 4 million term here, you need to multiply it with the leading coefficient, which is negative 1/2. So 4 million times negative 1/2, that's really negative 2 million. And then in order to complete the square, ask yourself, what's the opposite of negative 2 million? Well, that's going to be positive 2 million. And it should be positive because this parabola is opening down and we need a maximum revenue there. Okay, so there are the steps to completing the square. So let's just finish this off now. So revenue equals to negative 1/2 bracket P. Since there's a minus sign and plus sign, that means one of the signs has to be negative. And then all you have to do now is you take your 4,000 divided by 2. 4,000 divided by 2 is 2,000. And then close the bracket, square it, and then plus the 2 million, which is the y value there. Okay, so that's how you complete the square. And once you complete the square, the vertex is pretty easy to find. It's 2,000. And the y coordinate is 2 million. And once again, if you had to do a very light sketch of this, remember the y-axis is revenue, the x-axis is price. And here's your parabola. And if I went down here, this is the vertex right here. This is the 2,000. So if you charge $2,000, you get a maximum revenue of 2 million over here on the side. Okay, so this 2,000 is that guy right there. And this 2 million is the max revenue, which is right there. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Lots of different words in that problem, but it was a very simple question where you just had to find the vertex. Okay, let me move on to the next problem that you had. I think it was this question right here. The the cable supporting a suspension bridge problem. Okay, so for this particular problem, I'm going to just try to redraw this part of the parabola just underneath here. And there's a few things that I want you to kind of consider for this problem here. Here's a 60 here, but okay, so this point right here, just one sec. Just redraw this with a XY axis here. I think if I redraw the problem with the XY axes, it might make a little bit more sense. Now, one thing that you need to do is you need to change all these numbers so that it matches the coordinates of a graph. So there's a 60 feet right here, right? That represents this point right here, and that point right there is the y-intercept. So this is really the same thing as 0, 60. Okay, and then over at this point right here, that has a height of 10. And the question tells you that the length here is about, what, 200 feet? Oh, sorry, my pen's just not working here. So if you think about that logically, you take your 200 feet and ask yourself, what is half of that? Well, half of that is 100. So this point right here is going to be 100. So this is like the vertex actually. So it has a value of 100 for the x value and 10 for the y value. So that right there is the coordinates of the vertex. Now the question tells you a few more things. I can't draw all these supporting cables, but the distance right here is 25. All right, the horizontal distance between these supporting cables is 25. Maybe that will be important, who knows? I mean, it is, but eventually the question is asking for this height right there in purple, right? And if you think about this logically, this is gonna be really key here. On the main picture, from here to here, Jacqueline, that's 25. From here to here is also 25. From here to here is 25. From here to here, the halfway point, that's 25. So this gives you the whole 100 meter, 100 feet. This is another 25. This is another 25. And right here, this is the key one right here. Hold on, my pen's not working. This is the other 25 right here. So if you think about this point right here, the x value here is 175. Okay, so over here, this is 0. This is 100. So the question is asking you, when x equals to 75, what is this height? That's basically what the question is asking for. So what you need to do is you need to write the equation of the parabola and then plug in x equals to 175 to find the corresponding y height. The y height. Okay, so let's start off by writing out the equation of the parabola in standard form. Okay, hold on. Pen's not working here. Okay, and one thing that you need to find right away is the vertex, right? So the h value and the k value. And we know that because the vertex is right here, right? And this is the vertex right there. Halfway of 200 was 100 and it has a minimum height of 10. So if I plug that in, this will be x minus 100 squared plus 10, all right? Those are the coordinates of the vertex, and y would now equal to a. All right, so one of the very first things I did in the problem was I highlighted the y-intercept here, right? The 60 feet. The y-intercept is super important because the y-intercept tells you the value of x and y so that you can find your a value, which I'm highlighting in blue there. So if I plug in the y-intercept back into this problem here, let me just get rid of some of these colors here. Y would be 60. A, I don't know, but then x would be 0 because that's the y-intercept, minus 100 squared plus 10. And that will allow us to find the value of a. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the math here. This is 60. This equals to a. 0 minus 100 is negative 100, and then you square it. And if you go ahead and use a calculator here, that will give you a very big number. That gives you 10,000, I believe. So a times 10,000 plus 10 equals to 60. And then this is really the same thing as 10,000 a plus 10 equals to 60. So I'm pretty sure you're pretty good at this algebra here. And then you take this 10, you bring it to the other side, and that gives you 60 minus 10 equals to 10,000 a. 50 equals to 10,000 a. I'm getting tired of writing this 10,000 here. Okay, and then you want to divide both sides by 10,000. And if you do that correctly, let me just get out a calculator and do that. So 50 divided by 10,000. Okay, and if I change that to a fraction, I get 1 over 200. Sorry, the pen's not working here. Come on. Okay, so A equals to 1 over 200. So I guess you can cancel those off, and 5 divided by 1,000 there is 1 over 200. Okay, so let's go back and write our equation now. My equation is y equals to 1 over 200 bracket x minus 100 squared plus 10. That's my equation, right? Okay, so let's go back to the original problem now. And remember, sorry, there's a bunch of colors here now. Let me just erase all this. Okay, so I'm going to just blow this out really carefully so you can see it now. So if you think of this point right here, this point right here is the point 0, 0, and that's 25 meters. This is 25 meters. This is 25 meters. This is 25 meters. So right there, that's the 100 mark, right? So that's why this was the vertex 100, 10. And then another 25 meters, another 25 meters, another 25 meters. This right here is 75. So in total, this x value right here is 175, right? And the question is asking you, what is this height right here? All right, so if I think about this point right here, this point is 175, comma, question mark. That's what we're trying to find, this stupid question mark. Okay. All right, so basically I'm going to take this value right here, 175, and plug it back into my original equation that I found at the very bottom here. Okay, so here's my equation here. And in order to finish this question off, Jacqueline, we just plug in 175 here, right? So finally we do 1 over 200, bracket 175, minus 100 squared plus 10. And basically, I guess your calculator should do all the heavy lifting here, because these are actually some pretty big numbers to calculate. And hopefully, let me just do this in my calculator right now. Divide that by 200. Okay, so this gives me 28.125 plus this 10 here. And that should give me 38.125. Okay, so I hope that was the right answer. Just double check here. Yeah, that's probably the right answer there. Okay, so hopefully that helped you out, and yeah, so there.